Welcome to Sports Spectrum, the sports and faith podcast that brings Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
This episode of the Sports Spectrum podcast brought to you by Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum, $38 a month. You can sponsor a child, bring hope to a child, and release a child from poverty. You can make that difference, $38 a month. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum. Sponsor a child today. You provide food, education, medical care, vocational training, all done in the name of Jesus. Compassion does it right. You will not be disappointed. $38 a month. It goes right to helping a child in need. Go to compassion.com/sportsspectrum and sponsor a child today. Today's guest on the podcast, Washington Redskins punter Tress Way. Now, Tress has been with the Redskins since 2014, but his journey wasn't a smooth one. He went to college, played football at the University of Oklahoma, was a Sooner there, and then undrafted. He was a free agent, signed by the Bears in 2013, cut by the Bears in 2013, signed by the Bears in 2014, cut by the Bears in 2014. And you would think that would set a path where football was just not meant to be. In fact, Tress talks on this podcast about thinking that it might be over and that football was not supposed to be in his future. Instead, God intervenes. He ends up with the Redskins, and he leads the league in punting in 2014 at 47.5 yards per punt. Tress is also a married man to Brianna, a softball and soccer player. And in this podcast, we talk about maybe the most incredible engagement video I've ever seen. Tress has a video on YouTube with him and his wife, and he set up this amazing path to eventually asking Brianna to marry him, and the video is powerful. And we talked to Tress in this podcast about that. Tress is also a game board inventor. That's right, he's got a game called What's Your Bid that he invented. And so Tress will tell you about that, as well as becoming a dad to twin babies, a girl and a boy, and getting ready for the 2018 NFL season, his fifth season as the Redskins punter. Think you'll like this one. Tress is our first punter on the podcast, and hopefully he's not our last. He's got a great story, so let's get right to it. Here he is, Washington Redskins punter Tress Way, joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Welcome to the program, Tress.
Thanks, Jason.
It's great to talk to you. Thanks for being here on the show, and you're our first punter on the podcast, so
I'll take it, man.
You can take that, right? Punters are football players too, right?
That's right, dude. There you go. You said it, not me.
That's right. So tell our audience, because we're talking to you right in July here. Training camp is on its way, and mini camps just ended. Tell our audience about off-season prep, specifically from the position that you play and how you're preparing yourself. I know you're just coming back from a workout now. How you're preparing for the upcoming season.
Yeah, for us, man, granted, you are talking to a punter. You're not talking to a linebacker or defensive lineman where they're quote unquote in the trenches in there getting beat up. They get a flag if they hit me, so I've got it made in the shade pretty good. So with me, man, it's very I'd say it's very equivalent to a golfer. I could go out like you take Jordan Spieth or Dustin Johnson, some of these guys, and if they were to go out and run and lift and run and lift and do anything like that physically, but they didn't pick up a club and they didn't swing and they didn't work on their game in different situations, when it came time to get the season fired up for the PGA, they probably wouldn't do too well. But I do love working out. Ever since I was in high school, I played strong safety and a little bit of slot receiver, and so I always loved working out with the guys. I've always kind of been a workout guy, still am to this day, but man, for me, it's going through different situations. I walk the field, I play with the different winds. It's all about trying to Rob Gold, the kicker for the 49ers, who was a longtime kicker for the Chicago Bears, told me it's all about the more clubs you can have in your bag, like in a golf game, the better that you'll be and the longer your career will be. And so each off season, that's what I do. I go work out, I train, but man, I'm trying to elevate my game to the next level with directional punting, putting it on the sideline, pinning teams inside the 5, working with winds, the whole thing. It's really sounds super nerdy, but I love it because it's like a chess game within a football game. game of me playing against the returners, me and my coach against the returner and their coach, and trying to shut that dude down, because some of those guys, they are dangerous to put the ball in their hands. So
Absolutely. Now, tell me about how many times are you actually punting a football, maybe per day, per week in the off season?
Yeah, so I have ever since I was in baseball was always my favorite sport, and I was one of those guys where when I'd get in before game and I would start taking BP, and if the ball is just looking like a watermelon where I can't miss and hitting everything out of the park or gap to gap, I'll get in, take 5 or 10 swings and get out of there, and just because, man, I'm just feeling good, don't want to overthink it, and just, ride the wave. And so it does vary. A couple days, now that I'm 28 years old, a couple days, sometimes I'll wake up and the leg takes a little bit longer to loosen up, and then some days I wake up and I feel like it's already juiced and ready to go. And so I'll go anywhere from about 30 to 40 balls, and I'll do that about 3 to 4 times a week getting ready for training camp, because that's kind of – we had a special teams coach in Chicago that called them evidence-based decisions. When you get into training camp, these coaches, no matter what you've done the rest of the time, when they're in there and the pressure's on and the coaches are evaluating, they're taking notes, they are going off of the evidence that you give them in the moment. So I'll prep for a lot of reps. Our coach likes seeing a lot of different balls, a lot of different punts, and so I'll do the 30 to 40 balls about 3 or 4 times a week.
Okay. Now you mentioned baseball as a first love, and I know it's your brother Cole, I believe, was drafted by the Royals, and you also married into a baseball family. Your wife Brianna played softball and soccer at Oklahoma, and her dad was a Major League Baseball outfielder. Where does this love for baseball come from for you?
Yeah, so my dad's favorite sport was always baseball. And, man, honestly, as young as I can go back in my memory, I remember playing for the Whiteside White Sox in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I was about 3 or 4 years old. And, man, I just loved the game. And now being a punter where I get to hang out and eat some sunflower seeds on the sideline and then come in 4 or 5 times a game to try and help the team win, I really miss being that third baseman and 3-hole or cleanup where, you're just in the mix all the time. And I just absolutely loved baseball. And you mentioned my wife. She was an All-American softball player for the national championship team in 2013 for the University of Oklahoma, and played 4 years, started 4 years in soccer as well. And I said, gorgeous, I said, thank you so much for marrying me, but man, you're really taking a hit to the gene pool marrying a punter here. Like, I wonder what your dad's thinking, but they are the best. I thought my family got intense playing wiffle ball until I went and played with her family, because there's 5 of them instead of just 3 of us. And oh my goodness, I tell you what, her family's incredible. Her little brother just got drafted in the first round by the Milwaukee Brewers, and he signed with them. And so it is needless to say, there is no off season in our family. Somebody's always going nowadays.
Well, at least you can get free tickets now to a few games, right?
Man, isn't that the truth? Heck yeah. Just go out there, get some peanuts and ice cold Sprite or something, and do it.
When did you pivot from this love of baseball to football and realize, especially from the kicking standpoint, that you were pretty good at this?
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to get recruited for both football and baseball out of high school, and I was not a major recruit for baseball, but some small Division I schools, and I loved the game. And but whenever I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so whenever Bob Stoops, at the time the coach for the University of Oklahoma, came driving down my neighborhood street to my house on a recruiting visit, my entire neighborhood is outside their houses watching Coach drive up the street. It's a little tough to turn down the University of Oklahoma football if you grew up in Oklahoma. And so at the time, Coach had told me that, hey, Coach Galloway, the baseball coach at Oklahoma at the time, he said he wants you to come play for him as well. We'll give you the scholarship. You stay with us, man. You can take batting practice, do the whole thing with them. And so I had this plan to go and do both. And honestly, Jason, I came in and I was not ready. I wasn't kicking well. I wasn't punting well. I had a ways to go. And I got redshirted, and Coach had ended up recruiting a junior college punter and said, hey, you can go do baseball. Absolutely, I told you can, but, we're going to have another punter here that's your competition that you may miss out on reps. And prayed about it, talked with my parents about it, and I said, you know what, I'm going to stay here and grind it out for football, and got freshman All-American, and the guys voted me a team captain the next couple of years, which was my greatest honor out of all the awards, out of all of the records and stuff I left with Oklahoma. Being able to say I got voted a captain by the fellas was still my favorite thing, but it just kind of slowly transitioned over. The full ride aspect for football was really tough to turn down, especially when Mama was talking about free school. She was all about that one. So it was just a total. I mean, looking back, it was just such a cool opportunity and what a blessing, and ended up meeting my beautiful wife at a Fellowship of Christian Athletes meeting. And so needless to say, we're pretty big Sooner fans. So
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about meeting your wife and your time at Oklahoma with the University of Oklahoma in a second. But I want to ask you about growing up. You said you grew up in Tulsa. You even mentioned baseball as your first love. What about faith? What about church? You know, sitting around at the dinner table? What was life like in the way home?
We grew up, as long as I can remember, we grew up going to church. My little brother and I, back to baseball, we played travel baseball, and we were all over the country all spring and summer. So a lot of times, you know, you want to be playing on Sunday because that's championship Sunday. Otherwise, you lost too many games and you're home by Saturday. So we didn't get to go to church all of the time, probably from about the time I was 8 or 9 all the way up through 15 or 16 due to traveling all over the place. But Jason, that's really where FCA comes in and why I have such a heart for FCA, because every school year, every Tuesday morning at 7:45, we would meet in there. We'd meet in the gym. We'd meet in a teacher's classroom, and that's where I learned how to live my life. That's where I learned about my faith. We had an incredible FCA pastor at our high school, and our high school football coach helped lead the huddle, and my friends reached out to me, and it's that support that I had from my friends, from my parents, and just that example that I had along the way. That's what my wife and I are big fans of FCA because of what it's done in our lives, but especially me growing up as a kid. That's where I got to learn about Jesus. That's where I got to learn about that love and that faith.
Well, there's a lot of people, too, that struggle. I know even in our church up here in the Northeast in Connecticut that struggle because their kids are playing sports and they're traveling or just a part of different sports that have games or practices on Sundays, and they struggle with missing church.
Yeah.
So encourage their parents, and maybe there's not an FCA up here per se, but that doesn't mean that they can't still stay rooted in their faith, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and now that we're out here in Virginia and my wife was in California, there's various things that are out there. Now, granted, ours is sports, much like you said, with some of the folks at your church. There's athletes in action, and there's some young lives. And I mean, we went to church on Wednesday nights with the youth group, but it was our FCA crew that we would do church on Wednesday nights, because the weekends we were always, hey, basketball tournament, soccer tournament, baseball tournament. And so it is, it's just so cool how God uses all those different avenues. And it amazes me. That's what I love about FCA, is that's how we can still get God into schools. And it changed my life. So
we're talking to Tress Way here, the Washington Redskins punter on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You get to Oklahoma, and we talked a little bit about that earlier, but tell us about your time with the Sooners and just what it meant to go to school at Oklahoma. And we'll talk about your wife and meeting her in a second, but just being a Sooner and getting to that college and what life was like growing up, really in those maturing years from 18 to 22.
Yeah, whenever I first got to Oklahoma, I was rooming with one of my very best friends, another FCA guy from high school, and I remember coming from this powerhouse football program in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm just like, man, these are some of my best friends. Like, we're always in the state championship. We're always winning all these games. Like, how come some of my other buddies aren't getting recruited to Oklahoma and here playing with me? Because, I mean, we were the best of the best in high school. And then I started meeting the kind of kids that they do recruit to come to the University of Oklahoma. And I'm meeting these guys that are 6'6", 315 pounds, and that could lift me up with one hand and all this stuff. And I was fortunate enough, our recruiting class, I met some of my best friends that I'm still very close with to this day. And it was cool. I really believe that time in college, that's where you get to find out, who you are. This whole foundation has been laid, and thankfully I built upon that foundation of my faith and was surrounded with these incredible guys at the University of Oklahoma. But I got to learn how to do life while also playing football for the Sooners. And it's one of those things, Jason, where in the moment, like, you're just out there playing and your hair's on fire and you're having fun. Well, now my wife and I will go back to the campus and drive around. And it's just like, man, we really did not soak it in as much as we should have. We talked about even just taking classes so that we could walk around and be in college again. We missed it so much. So it was so cool formed those friendships and just the funniest stories that we have now to share with the kids. And looking back, the best decision I ever made. Obviously met the wife there and stuff, but playing football for the Sooners and getting to spend my college career there was just a blast, man.
So from an athletic standpoint, if I was saying, Tress, give me the one moment that always comes to your mind, or the one story when you think about your time at Oklahoma as a football player, what is it?
I would say the Oklahoma-Texas football game. A lot of people don't understand how that game truly is. It's 100,000 plus fans split right down the middle. And my sophomore year, we were beating them so bad that they left at the end of the third quarter. And so we stayed and celebrated the whole fourth quarter with our fans because all the Texas fans had bailed. And so that Oklahoma-Texas football game at the Texas State Fair and then beating the brakes off of them so bad that their fans left. That is for sure probably athletically my favorite.
I love that. Now,
yeah.
Let's talk about your wife and Brianna. You met her. Your life changes in Norman, obviously, not just because of football. So tell me how you guys met and got together in the sort of the process of even becoming an item.
Yeah, it's actually a pretty funny story, man. A few months before we had actually met, the girls, the Oklahoma softball girls, were playing in the College World Series on ESPN, and I had just gotten back from a mission trip with the girls basketball team and the football team from Haiti. And my dad and I, we watch the College World Series every year, especially whenever Oklahoma's in. Well, this girl, Brianna Turang, flashes up as one of the featured players because she's hitting for like 480 and, like having this incredible postseason. And I mean, just a smoke show on like her picture. And I'm like, oh my word. And my dad looks at me and he goes, T, who is that? I said, Dad, I don't know, but I'm going to find out. And so that is a true story, man. And so I got back to school and it turns out that she had not been coming to FCA in the spring because obviously it was softball. So she wasn't able to come out, and she was planning on coming in the fall. And I think our FCA chaplain was doing me a solid. He heard that she was this incredible girl with a strong faith in Christ, and he asked her to be on the leadership team. Well, at the time, I was the president of FCA. So I think he did me a solid. And we were, Jason, it's hysterical looking back. I was dating one of her soccer teammates, and she was dating one of my teammates. And I came up and I shook her hand. And I said, hey, Bree, I said, my name is Tress. And I said, I just wanted to know, I said, I just wanted to let you know that, hey, I'm down to give this a shot here. Like, you are absolutely gorgeous. I've heard nothing but great things about you. I'd love to get to know you. And she was so caught off guard. And I was saying it with a smile, like I was nervous out of my mind anyways. And so about a couple days go by. We sat there talking for a couple hours. A couple days go by. I broke up with my girlfriend. She took a little bit longer. I think she's a little nicer than I am. I kind of knew what I wanted. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go for this. And she broke up with her boyfriend a few months later. And we became best friends. We would go get some ice cream. We would just kind of hang out, and asked her on a date at FCA camp. And then the rest is history, man.
The Bible talks about boldness, but this is a different kind of boldness here, Tress.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's the right way to go. That may not be the blueprint, man.
Exactly. Well, there's a wonderful video on YouTube that I saw. It has like 60,000 views, which is quite a bit, of how you guys got engaged. So I need you to tell us the whole story on this, because I watched this video. It's about 24 minutes. And I was like, wait a minute, a 24-minute engagement video. Usually it's like 45 seconds on Instagram. And you had a 24-minute video. And I really did watch most of this, and I was moved by it. It was really powerful. Tell me and tell the listeners how you put this whole video together, the idea for it, and finally coming to the point of asking her to be your wife.
Yeah, so she had mentioned we never really had that marriage talk. We would do that, looking back now, the quote unquote cute hints like, man, you're really exactly the kind of person that I want to marry, but we didn't want to freak each other out like, hey, let's do this. It was kind of like, man, the kind of person I pray for, you're literally every piece of that. So we were talking, well, just in passing, she would kind of mention things like, hey, a lot of girls, this and that. Well, when I get engaged, that, I want to have my nails done. I'd love for it to be videotaped so that I always have it and, can always go back and watch it. So I have a note in my phone that says Bree. Well, anything she mentions, any little shirt or any pair of shoes or, anything like that, I write it all down in there, something that she'd like to do. And I try and surprise her and do fun stuff like that. But I'm a dude, and naturally I think of other stuff and forget. So I always go back to my notes, and I have all my memories that I put in there. So I knew she wanted it recorded. I reached out to the video director for FCA, and he said that he'd be willing to help us out. And man, honestly, I chose 4 spots. The first place that I ever danced with her, the first place that I kissed her, the first place that I told her I loved her, and then where we first met. And so I had all of those spots, and I chose 4 very important people and families in our lives. My family, her family flew in from California, which set it over the top. The gentleman that married us, him and his family, and then her softball chaplain and FCA chaplain and her family. And dude, honestly, I set it up, and all I said is, hey guys, I just want you to love on her, tell her how amazing she is, like how excited you are for her, and then pray for her and send her on her way. And 2 of my best friends drove her around town. She had no idea what was going on. And so everybody else made it so special. I kind of had like this master plan of putting all the pieces in place. But dude, honestly, when you watch it and you see, like you mentioned, like moved by it and how special it is, it's because those people took the time to really tell Bri how they feel and how incredible she is. And that's all I want. I wanted her to have this awesome memory of it, and we taped it. And now, like she wanted, we can always go back and watch it.
I got to imagine though, and first of all, when you watch it, it is like watching a movie. You can just tell everything is not scripted in the sense of what they would say or how they would react, but it was set up very well by you. By the way, you were executive producer extraordinaire on this one for sure. But,
yeah, that was the craziest part, man. I wasn't there the whole time. I had laid it all out, and then I'm waiting at the finish line for her. So,
but my thought is, she's got to know that like this is like a big deal. This isn't even through it and wondering what's going on. At some point, she's got to be like, so maybe this is the engagement thing that's happening. Does she go back and tell you that she was starting to realize what was happening?
She said halfway through. Now, the thing is, Jason, I love coming up with these really, really cool dates. And so it's always something fun. It's always something different. But she didn't think initially like, oh, man, this is it, because we hadn't really talked about it. Like, hey, it's coming soon. Oh, hey, we're looking at rings. Like none of that had happened. And so she just thought it was this. She thought I was coming to pick her up for a nice dinner and a movie because I knew she'd want to be dressed fairly nice if it was going to be on video. And so all of a sudden, my 2 best friends and a guy with a video camera pick her up, and she's like, that's why you can see initially, she's like, what's going on? And so that about halfway through, she told me, she was like, oh my gosh, this is really going down. Then that's why when she saw her folks towards the end, it was just nothing but tears and love and things like that. So it was very, very cool, man. They did it. Everybody did such an awesome job.
We'll continue our conversation with Tress Way, Washington Redskins punter, in just a moment, but want to take a second to tell you about how you can partner with us at Sports Spectrum. For $36 for an entire year, you can become a member of the Sports Spectrum family. $3 a month basically gets you in, and you partner with us. And that partnership allows you to help fund the things that we provide for free to all of our viewers, our readers, our listeners, including this podcast, all of the articles written at sportspectrum.com, all of the great video content that you can see on our YouTube channel, all of the content. You help fund it with your partnership. And plus, you get a magazine. You get our quarterly magazine. Sports Spectrum has been around for over 30 years producing a magazine. And it's a really great tool, a great magazine to share maybe at a youth group or with a men's ministry or just with a family. There's some great articles in it. It's a really neat, beautiful magazine. It's great to hold and give away. So become a partner with us. $36 for the entire year gets you in. It's $3 a month. It's basically like spending a coffee once a month. You become a member of the Sports Spectrum family. So go to sportspectrum.com, sportspectrum.com, and sign up and become a member and partner with us here at Sports Spectrum. Now back to our conversation with Tress Way, Washington Redskins punter, right here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. So Oklahoma's finished, and you're thinking about the next step, the NFL, and it doesn't work out right away for you. You're undrafted. You sign with the Bears, and then you get cut at the end of preseason in 2013. and you find yourself without a job for the first time and you're not in college. So take us through that process of trying to go through, because the NFL is a brutal place. It can be, especially trying to get jobs in this league. You get cut by the Bears, and where's your mindset? Where's your faith? What did you do to keep there's so many questions I have. What did you do to keep yourself busy during that year? Take us through that 2013 year and getting cut by the Bears.
Yeah, sure, man. Honestly, too, Jason, it was something I was pretty embarrassed of for a while, where I wouldn't want to tell my story of how I got into the NFL. And now I look back, and I mean, the person it turned me into, the player it turned me into, and I'm just so thankful. It just is one of those things where you really, in the moments when it's really hard to trust and lean on God, it's always, when you do it, you eventually look back and say, my goodness, like, how could I ever doubt? How could I ever wonder? And so I was undrafted, like you said, by the Bears, and wasn't punting very well. I was competing against a veteran who was punting well, but I showed these signs where, man, I knew it was in there, but I just couldn't piece it all together. And I got cut, and Robbie Gold and the special teams coach there, they said, man, it's there. Like, you're close, it's there, and you have the ability to punt in this league for a long time. And I said, well, thank you guys very much. And Bree and I were engaged at the time. I went home, and I was speaking for FCA. I love speaking. I love going out and speak at churches, meetings, corporate events, whatever. And so I always speak at a lot of FCAs back home in Oklahoma. And I'm driving around, and I decide to call Kelly. I'm going to tell Kelly, hey, you know what? Thank you so much for everything. Kelly's my agent. I said, Kelly, thank you so much for everything. And I said, I'm going to hang him up. I was offered a medical sales job here in Oklahoma City. Bree and I are engaged. I can't thank you enough for all the hard work of giving me a shot, and I wish I'd done better. But, this is how it goes sometimes. And I was ready. It's crazy to say it now, Jason. I had actually decided to quit football. I was done. And 2 days went by. I had got all the books to start this job. I was starting to read. I was starting to study up on my new role and what I was going to be doing. And I went and spoke. And the gentleman that married us, Kent Bowles, he would drive me around when I was speaking, and I've got a bunch of pizzas in my lap. And I get up, I speak to a high school FCA meeting, and then we get back in the car, and he says, man, I just wish you could listen to yourself sometimes. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, I'm going to drive, and I'm not going to say a word to you. Just as we go home, think about what you just spoke on. And I said, okay. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking about how it's when everything seems like it's so hard, when everything seems tough, like to have that fire, and man, just go. Like, God's got your back. Like, just go, just keep moving forward, keep rolling. And I thought, man, I said, I'm not done. And he goes, I don't think you are, man. He goes, go at it one more time. And I said, okay. So I called the company that had hired me, and I said, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm going to give it one more go. And they said, absolutely, Tress. Like, we support you. Go for it. Let us know if anything happens. And I prayed about it. Bree told me the same thing. My parents told me the same thing. We're like, man, we were praying for you, and we just wanted you to give it one more shot. I said, all right, well, let's do this thing. Here we go. And so Bree and I are now married, which that adds an element into it. So now,
Sure.
So now Bree and I are married, and that going into that 2014 season, the Bears ended up signing me back. So that whole 2013, I worked part-time for FCA. I worked out every morning. I punted, and eventually, and my goal was to elevate my game to be able to play at that next level.
And then 2014 comes, and you're back with the Bears. You go through preseason again, and it's like, oh, here we go again. You end up getting cut. But take us through that process, because obviously getting cut turned out to be the best blessing in disguise you could imagine by you ending up with the Redskins.
Absolutely, man. So 2014 comes around, and I come in with another veteran punter. They had cut their punter the year that they had the year before, and I came in with another veteran punter named Drew Butler, who played a couple seasons in Pittsburgh and in Arizona. And, man, I was punting the ball really well. I'm calling up Bree, and I'm saying, man, I'm rolling. Like, this is what, everybody was talking about. Like, I get it. It had all clicked, and I was confident. I was having a blast with it. And then the draft comes, and they drafted the punter that they have now, Pat O'Donnell. And they had cut Drew, but they kept me. Well, when you draft a specialist, when you draft a kicker or a punter,
Yeah.
and especially in the 5th or 6th round, Tom Brady was picked in the 5th or 6th round. So if you pick a punter, you're more than likely going to go with that guy. And I knew that. But Robbie Gould was still in Chicago at the time, and he said, Tress, he said, you have just got to do your game, do your thing and play your game every single day. Make them question why they drafted somebody. Make it apparent so that other teams are hearing about it. You just do your thing, man. Just keep going. And Jason, I was punting the best I'd ever punted in my life. I'm calling up Bree. I'm talking to my dad. I'm talking to my folks, and just, man, I don't know what they're going to do, but all I know is I'm rolling right now. And so they called me into the office at the end of the preseason, and they said, Tress, we are going to release you, but I want you to know 4 teams have called about you. Now, when you get cut, Jason, I'm sure maybe if people have seen that HBO Hard Knocks,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they pump you up and they try and make you feel as good as possible because they know they're just cutting your dreams in half here. And so I thought they were just kind of petting the dog as they put it down here. Like, hey, teams are calling about you, keep an eye out. Like, here you go. And so
Yeah.
now I'm cut. My wife and I are driving home, and I'm sitting there with my wife who's in nursing school. I am now unemployed, being cut by the Bears, and I'm just silent driving home going, what am I going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm punting so well. This is just what a killer. And about the time we hit St. Louis, driving home from Chicago to Oklahoma City, we hit about St. Louis, and I get a call from the 703 area code, and I'm like, hello? And it's somebody from the Redskins. They said, hey, Tress, we claimed you off the waiver wire, which means now. I said, all right, heck yeah. And he said, well, where are you? I said, we're in St. Louis driving home to Oklahoma City. He said, what time will you be home? I said, well, we'll be home about 4:30 or 5. He said, okay, we're going to fly you out at 7 and get you out here. I said, okay. And I looked at Bree. I said, babe, I'm with the Redskins now. And Bree's like, oh, heck yeah, let's do this. And so Bree was all fired up. She was so supportive this entire time, never once made me feel worried. I mean, she was the one that I could lean on, which I'm so thankful for. And so then the story getting out to Washington's hysterical, man. The storm comes. We get delayed. I land at like 1 a.m. The scout that's supposed to pick me up falls asleep. So I'm laying there in Washington Dulles. I don't know what to do, who to call, where to go. I don't know. I don't know what to do. So I'm laying there on my backpack. Eventually the scout calls me back, picks me up at about 2:30. The shuttle for the facility for rookies leaves at 5:30. So I take a quick 2.5 hour nap, and I get up. I meet my special teams coach, still my coach to this day, Coach Ben Kotwika. And he said, Tress, we've had 2 punters here. Neither one of them, to be frank, have been cutting it. And I spoke with Coach D. Camillus from Chicago. He said that you're punting the ball very well, and you're a great young man to be around. And I'm going to be frank with you. We don't have a lot of time. You got 10 days. You punt better than the other guy. You got the job. I said, yes, sir. Let's do it. And I walked out there. I did my first set as your quote-unquote interview that you often do as a specialist. Punted the ball really well, and man, I can't believe I'm saying it now, but now I'm going into my 5th season with the Redskins.
Isn't it crazy? I mean, it really is crazy how the obstacles, and when you look back, you see the perfect plan in place, but you have to be thinking, what in the world is going on here when you're in the midst of that, right?
Yeah, the thing is, Jason, like really looking back now, and it sounds so cheesy or like so cliche, but it's those times, man. Like when you have to lean on God, you can take the easy way out and just do your thing. But whenever you feel something in your heart and you lean on God, it's only whenever that time has passed that you look back and see that God got you through it and had this plan all along. And I'm not saying, even if I know my relationship with Christ, even if I had hung up the cleats in football and I went and did medical sales, I know that God would still have this incredible plan for my life. But it's that moment where it was just so enticing to take an easier way out instead of going through this stress and this emotional, just crazy time. And I have all these people praying for me and encouraging me, like a lot of people pray for clarity and they're asking for it. You got all these people saying, hey man, you should do it. You should go for it. Maybe it's God speaking through these folks saying, hey, let's go, man. I got you. Like, come on. This is going to be brutal, but you're going to be better for it because of how you're going to be as a person, how you're going to be as a player. And it's something I can't wait to tell the kids one day, that I always share with other people, is that only when that time has passed, whenever you did trust in God, can you look back and say, my goodness, what an incredible plan it was.
Ain't that the truth? We're talking to Tress Way here, the Redskins punter on the Sports Spectrum podcast. So you mentioned marrying Bree and then having twin boys. So we'll talk about the sort of progression of the football career in a second. I want to talk about faith in the locker room as well. But what's it been like being a husband and a dad, and what that process was like to get married and then eventually having kids? What's that been like?
Yeah, man, it was whenever I had an incredible dad to give me an example of how to treat a woman and how to treat your kids. And the coolest thing for me is every morning whenever I wake up and I do my quiet time and I drive in the facility, I'm praying for us, our friends and family. It's this. With marriage, with kids, it's just this excitement. I feel like when you have a relationship with Christ, there's just always something to be excited about. I'm not saying that life isn't gonna suck sometimes. I mean, you're gonna go through some tough stuff, but man, you just have stuff to be excited about, to see what God's gonna do. And I'm sorry, you may have misunderstood me a little bit. We do have a boy and a girl for the twins instead of two boys.
Gotcha.
And so I look at our baby boy Harper and our baby boy Bo and our baby girl Harper, and I just hold them and I pray over them, and I just can't wait to see what God does with their life. You know, a lot of people say, "Oh, hey, Tress, you're in the NFL." Bree was a two-sport athlete in college and played professional fast pitch softball. We can't wait to see the sports or the athletes or whatever, and that's awesome, dude. If they want to do sports, because Bree and I love sports, I'd love to play catch with the kids. I'd love to play wiffle ball with them. I hope they do. But dude, if they don't, I can't wait to see what God does in their life. My parents, and if I'm in the Tulsa area, come to every single event that I speak at, whether they've heard the same stories, the same way God changed my life. They've probably heard it all, but they sit there with tears in their eyes and they're smiling, grinning from ear to ear. And I can't wait. I'm not saying they're going to speak anything like that. I can't wait to see what God does in their life. I can't wait to see what Bree and I's marriage looks like. I'm so thankful for what it looks like now. We think about 10 years and the years after, and that is, I will tell you, like I said, Jason, there obviously is going to be rough times in life, but man, when you have a relationship with Christ, there's just stuff to be excited about, and that's how we live our life. That's how we want our family to be. And marrying Bree changed my life. Having these twins definitely changed my life, and so it is. We're just getting started, man.
I think it's great that you're doing this, and I love your joy, because I think the Bible talks a lot about having joy for the Lord and not having the joy be affected by our circumstances. But tell me about being a football player and taking that into the locker room. You're now in your 5th season with the Redskins, and we saw, especially even though it was your rival, so many men of great faith with the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl, and just being so open about who the Lord was to them and how much God meant to them. Nick Foles and certainly Carson Wentz leading the way in that respect. So tell me about faith in the Redskins locker room. Obviously, your quarterback is no longer there, Kirk Cousins, and he's departed, but Kirk was an instrumental leader from a faith perspective in the locker room. Tell me about you now and being in that Redskins locker room, and how you and many of your teammates stay in God's word in and out of the season.
Yeah, you know, we have this there's a big percentage. I'd say a quarter or so of the guys are believers, outspoken believers, with probably a smaller percentage of us, attending Bible study, praying for one another, encouraging one another. But man, it's not far off than like you're probably typical corporate building or an office building where you got folks that want to live life their own way, and then you got folks that have had that taste and that relationship with Christ where they know what life like that looks like, so they don't want to do life any way else besides that. And so with us in the locker room, man, it's really cool when guys are going through a tough time. And I think this really is a testament to just how powerful God is. You look at these guys, and a lot of people would look at these folks when you see them on ESPN or you see them playing Monday Night Football and playing on Thanksgiving Day, all this. You look at them and they go, man, they got it all. Like they got it all figured out. Everything's good. Like, look at this. What an incredible life, all this. Man, a lot of these guys, like they have some very broken areas of their life, but when they come and talk to us about it, it's not like we're calling them out saying, hey, this is messed up, whatever. We love on them. But when things start to get tough for those guys, it's really cool that they identify with us. Like we have the idea or a general idea because of our relationship with Christ, what life can be like. And that is just the coolest thing to sit there. I was sitting with one of my teammates, and he just wanted to talk, and life was not going good. He wanted to ask how we do things in our house. He wanted to ask like how things started for me in my relationship with Christ, and what does life really look like for a professional athlete with a life life with identity in Christ. And so we'll talk with these guys. We'll pray for these guys. We'll love on them. And it's so cool, man, because unless I'm telling you, you would have no idea that stuff goes on. It's so awesome that Foles and Carson Wentz and Kirk and a lot of us, we are outspoken about our faith. But, man, where lives are changed are inside the locker room, where guys are sick of just having this broken way of life, and they talk to some of us, they reach out to some of us, and if we can just be a bit of that light that shines that can turn them towards Christ, that's what it's all about. And so it makes you wonder, when it's all said and done, when my career's done, or Kirk, or some of these other guys that you've mentioned, how many eternities and how many families will eventually be changed by God just through the locker room, and what an incredible story that would be.
Well, plus it extends past that because, like you mentioned, it's Monday Night Football and Thanksgiving and every Sunday, and you have all of these fans that are buying the jerseys and going crazy for their teams each week, and you realize there's an impact that can be made that's even greater than just inside the locker room. And obviously those are the deepest relationships you can make, but there's a lot of people watching you every week, and there's a lot of people following you on Twitter, and they can see something different. And this is a great example to use your platform, right?
When we've got these opportunities to go out to schools, and the fans and the signing the autographs, signing up, whenever we're at trading camp, we'll sit there for hours signing for these fans lined up, and I always write Matthew 10:39. It's my favorite verse. I always write it under my signature, under my autograph. And I always wonder, like, whenever I get done doing a bunch of, because they're just there, we're all lined up, all players are walking around the field for all these kids and these parents and stuff, and I can't help but wonder if just little seeds like that, where you're talking about Monday Night Football, and you're talking about like us getting to go speak maybe at these big events and getting to share our faith, and people just get to see the other side. They get to see what makes us tick and what keeps us going, and just signing Bible verses underneath our signature. It makes you wonder, those seeds that are planted. Like, this is what amazes me about God, is you plant that little seed, you just do what God asks us to do, and then potentially lives, families, generations are then changed. Whereas God came into our family, generations are now changed, where our kids, they'll grow up in a house that loves the Lord. They'll grow up in a house where they see mom and dad pray for each other and pray for them, and hopefully they catch that fire, and they have that relationship with Christ that they then get to do and pass down. And so if we can, I mean, dude, we get to play football for a little bit of life.
Right.
And then you've got the whole rest of your life and then all of eternity. And if you can change some lives, then, I mean, dude, that's what it's all about.
You mentioned Matthew 10:39 is your favorite verse. I'm reading here from the NIV. It says, "He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it." Obviously, that's Jesus speaking there. Tell me what that verse means to you.
So that was my senior year of high school, and I got asked to be the president of FCA in high school, and I said yes, and I went home, and I had just realized I had this moment with God. I said yes, and our previous president of FCA was a linebacker at our high school. And God had just called me out in that verse. And I had just realized that I had been a poser for a very long time. I was the guy that could know every worship song, that I could have the cross necklace hanging around my neck, and I could make it all look good. But I really didn't want any part of what God had in store for my life. I wanted to do my thing. I wanted to make sure everybody thought I was a good guy. I wanted to live my life, but I didn't want to get out there, and I didn't want to win people over to Jesus. I didn't want to get out. I didn't really want to share my story. I didn't want to lose my life every single day, so that hopefully people would look at me and know what I represent. Not saying that I'm perfect. I am not perfect in any way. I'm the opposite. I need a perfect Savior so that I can live my life the way that I want to and the way that He wants to. But if I can lose my life each day, I know that I'll eventually find it. And that, man, that's what I did. I continued to try and lose my life for Christ and give it to Him and see what He has in store. And then I found it. That's how I found my life.
Couple more questions here. Let's have some fun for a second. I was looking at your Twitter handle, Tress, and it says board game inventor. Please explain.
Okay, dude. So I grew up in a very competitive household, and we were game night family all through college. That's what we do every single weekend. We'd have this massive game night with all of our friends, and so 2016 training camp, the Associated Press releases it was the 100th anniversary or something like that, or the 80th anniversary of the AP. And so they released the top 100 college football programs of the last 80 years, but it was based upon a point scale where it was, hey, weeks at number one, national championships, Heisman Trophy winners. So their point scale that they used, all this criteria, you couldn't argue it because it was the ranking according to points. It wasn't somebody's opinion or some analyst making this list. It was points. And so I went around, I memorized the top 10, and I was proud that Oklahoma was number 2. So I memorized the top 10. I started asking all of our teammates and coaches, and the guys loved it. I would keep track of how many they got wrong until they named all 10. And so it turned into, it was actually Coach Gruden. He said, hey, he goes, that was pretty cool. He goes, you got another one? I said, no, but Coach, good thing is I'm a punter. So when you guys are in meetings studying film, I'll just go up to the room and I'll just start coming up with questions. And so I went upstairs and, dude, I just started what everybody loved about it was it had statistical backup and it had multiple answers. So I started coming up with the last 10 Super Bowl winners, the last 10 Super Bowl losers. Hey, the 5 teams that Michael Jordan and the Bulls beat in the NBA Finals, the 6 largest states by land area, like all these different questions from the 7 ingredients to McDonald's Big Mac, like all these different multiple answer trivia questions. And I'm messing around. We're playing it, and I cut out little note cards, and we're playing with family, playing with friends. And Bree looks at me and she goes, hey, this is really cool. Like, I hate trivia, but I love this game. She goes, why don't you look into copywriting it and doing something like that? And I said, all right, sure, let's do it. And so we messed around, did our research. My mother-in-law came up with the LLC for us, which is Way Fun Games, a little play on of the last name. And so we started this company, and I started with that trivia game called What's Your Bid? And it's all, you don't have to get all the answers right. It's just about getting a few of them right, but you can't guess wrong. And so ended up creating a few more, copyrighted 4 games, still doing What's Your Bid, and then we'll start in with the other ones. And dude, I love it. It is just something fun to do on the side. I really enjoy it. I love the creative aspect of it. And oh man, you're going to kill me. I forget the exact verse, but it's in Ecclesiastes. I think it's like 8:15 or 8:13. It's something like that. And it's about saying, hey, we need to laugh and have fun because God has given us all this work under the sun. And so people need to enjoy time together and have fun with one another. And that is our verse for the company, is just in hopes that we can get people together to just have fun and enjoy life and hang out with one another. So,
well, I would be remiss if I didn't ask where people could get the game. Is it on Amazon or different places like that?
It is on Amazon. The trivia game is the only one on there right now. It's an awesome family party game. I mean, we've played upwards of 15 or 16 people. Again, it's called What's Your Bid, and it is on Amazon. And man, I promise it won't disappoint. It's really a good time.
I love it. All right, let's end it with this. What in this season of life, Tress? You've been in the NFL now for a while, 5 seasons or so. You're getting ready to play and heading into your 5th season, I should say. What are you learning from the Lord during this time of life? You're a husband and a dad now. Life is much different in just the last 3-4 years than probably you could have ever imagined. But what has God been teaching you now during this season of life? What are you learning from him?
Man, it honestly sounds crazy. At this point in my life, I'm going into my 5th season in the NFL, like you said. We are parents of twins, and my wife and I just celebrated our 4th anniversary. I need God more than ever. That is what has been revealed to me with the twins, with my marriage, and with this offseason for football. Now, instead of viewing football as this stress where, oh man, not only do you have Bree, you got the twins now. And then the man I need to be daily for Bree, the leader, the husband, and now a father for the twins. It has been so cool, I've always had a relationship with Christ, but almost this desire where I can't wait to wake up in the morning and read my Bible to just, all right, come on, like I need you. Like what do you want me to look like? That's what I pray for every single morning. My first line of my prayer to start my quiet time is, God, teach me to be the man, the husband, and the father that you want me to be in that order. If I can be the man that God wants me to be, that's going to turn into the husband that God wants me to be, that turns me into the father that God wants me to be. And that is something, Jason, right now in my life, what I'm learning from God. And it's so cool. Like at 28 years old, and I really got serious about my faith at 18 years old, is I need God more than ever now at this stage that I'm in life. Yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years. I've been walking with God for 10 years. But right now at 28, with a wife, with kids, and in my fifth season in the NFL, I not only do I need him more, I want him more. I want my life to look the way he wants it to look. And it's something that I desire. It's something that I pray for. And ultimately something I can't wait to see. I can't seek him first. He'll add everything else. And I can't wait to see what it looks like, man.
So good. This is Tress Way, Washington Redskins punter. We really appreciate having you on the podcast, Tress. Great getting to know you. Now, a lot of us, including myself, will be following you throughout the rest of this year for sure. Thanks for joining us and wish you nothing but the best.
Absolutely. Thank you, man.
And we do thank Tress Way for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. Going to be fun to watch his growth and development throughout his NFL career, and certainly fun to watch him in the 2018 NFL season. You can follow Tress on Twitter at Tress_Way, and you can go to Amazon and buy his board game. What's Your Bid is the name of the board game. So just search it. His company is called Way Fun Games. And again, the game is called What's Your Bid. Go to Amazon.com and buy that game. I know I'm buying it. I'm looking forward to playing it. Looking forward to having a family game night with my wife and my daughter, maybe some friends over, and check out What's Your Bid. We appreciate Tress for joining us here on the podcast. We appreciate you for listening, and we appreciate Compassion International for partnering and sponsoring this podcast. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. It's $38 a month. We all want to know where our money's going. We all want to help. We all want to be charitable and joyful in our giving. If compassion.com isn't the place to go, I don't know where to go, to be quite honest with you. It's $38 a month. And you are providing hope in releasing a child from poverty. You get to pick the child. You go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. There's a list of children there. You sign up. You pray about it. Maybe you want to find a little girl that's 6 years old. You can do that with Compassion. Maybe you want to find a boy who's maybe 10, 11, 12 years old based upon the ages of your children. You can do that as well. You pray about it. Then you pick the child that you think God is leading you to. And then you become their sponsor. You sponsor a child, and you, one-on-one with this child, develop a relationship, which I got to tell you, what we do with our young boy from Haiti that we sponsor, and we're able to kind of become pen pals in many ways and write letters to him, and he writes letters to us, letting him know what the Lord is doing. And then, listen, I mean, it's $38, so it is a monetary contribution, but that releases these children from poverty. And that provides them with schooling, with teaching, with food, with education, all of these things that every child deserves. You can do this by sponsoring a child at Compassion International. Go to compassion.com/sportspectrum. Sponsor a child today. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. You can email me, jason@sportspectrum.com, with any guest ideas you might have or any thoughts on this podcast. We'd also love for you to go to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, like us there, and then take a screenshot of this podcast. If you really like Tress Way's story, let people know about it. Post it on your Facebook page. Post it on your Instagram page. And let the world know about the Sports Spectrum podcast, the intersection of sports and faith, and being able to bring these stories that are encouraging and that have a gospel message to it to the world. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Sports Spectrum podcast. We'll see you next time. Have a great rest of your day. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast.